Anna Hartfield thought she knew everything about her husband, Dr. Thomas Hartfield, until the day she found a lost wallet in a grocery store parking lot, and the name on the driver's license inside wasn't his, but that of a woman who had vanished 10 years earlier. It was a Sunday afternoon like any other. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting long shadows over the cracked pavement of the Crestline grocery parking lot. Anna Mitchell, a 38-year-old mother of one, had just finished her weekly shopping. She pushed her cart across the lot toward her car, distracted by a mental checklist, dinner prep, laundry, and an overdue call to her sister. Her thoughts swirled in quiet monotony until something odd on the ground caught her eye. Just beside, the rear tire of her car was a worn leather wallet, scuffed and slightly faded, as if it had been there for days. At first she almost stepped over it, assuming it belonged to someone who would come rushing back any minute. But after a quick glance around and seeing no one in sight, Anna bent down and picked it up. It felt surprisingly heavy in her hands. The leather was cracked, the seams fraying, as though it had seen better years. Instinctively, she looked for identification so she could return it to its owner. She opened it, expecting to find the usual: driver's license, credit cards, maybe a few crumpled receipts. There was no cash, no license, no business cards. Just 2 credit cards, an insurance card, and a single photograph tucked in a plastic sleeve. The photo was old, the corners curled, and the image slightly faded. It showed a young woman, no older than 25, holding a baby in her arms. They were standing outside in what looked like a public park, a green lawn in the background and a cloudy sky above. The woman was smiling, her expression warm and natural. But what stopped Anna cold was the baby. He couldn't have been more than 6 months old, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. His face was unmistakable: round cheeks, a tiny dimple on his chin, and a birthmark just visible on his left shoulder. A birthmark shaped like a teardrop. Anna felt her breath catch. Her hands began to tremble slightly as she stared at the photo. That birthmark. It was the same as the one on her son Caleb's shoulder. He was 6 years old now, adopted as a newborn through a private agency. She and her husband, Thomas, had waited nearly a year to be matched. They had been told it was a closed adoption. No family information was available. Everything had seemed legitimate. And yet, here she was, holding a picture of a baby who looked exactly like her son, held by a woman she'd never seen before. She flipped the photo over. Nothing was written on the back, just a faint smudge of ink, long since faded. Her heart pounded harder. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe the resemblance was only in her mind. Still, the unease crawled up her spine like icy fingers. She looked around again, half expecting someone to come running up and snatch the wallet from her hands, explaining it all away. But the parking lot was quiet, the only sound the distant rumble of shopping carts and the dull buzz of insects. She slipped the wallet into her purse and climbed into her car, unable to focus as she drove home. The grocery bags rustled beside her, but she barely noticed. The photo sat on the passenger seat, calling to her like a voice she couldn't quite hear. Every time she glanced at it, the nagging feeling grew stronger. That baby was Caleb. She was sure of it. At home, she unpacked the groceries methodically, trying to stay calm, trying to tell herself she was overreacting. She didn't mention the wallet to Thomas or Caleb. She waited until they were distracted, her husband in his study, her son playing on his tablet, before she pulled the wallet back out and studied the contents again. The credit cards bore the name Rachel Everett. a name that meant nothing to her. She opened her laptop and typed the name into a search engine, not expecting anything to come of it. To her surprise, several results came up. Most were unremarkable. White pages listings, old social media profiles. But one stood out, a missing persons report dated nearly 10 years earlier. Rachel Everett, 24, last seen leaving a prenatal clinic in Riverside, a neighboring city. Pregnant at the time. No sightings since. Anna clicked on the link, her pulse pounding in her ears. The photo in the report was clearer than the one in the wallet, but it was definitely the same woman. Same soft eyes, same warm smile. Her heart sank. This wasn't just a found wallet. This was a puzzle piece, one that didn't fit into the picture she thought she knew. She stared at the screen, trying to understand what this meant. Could Rachel Everett be Caleb's biological mother? If so, why hadn't the adoption agency disclosed that? Why was this woman missing? Had anyone ever tried to find her? The questions came faster than answers. Anna felt a chill settle in her bones. She stood up and walked to Caleb's room. He was sitting on the floor with his Lego sets, humming softly. She knelt beside him and brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. That same dimple, that same birthmark. Her son had a history she didn't know, possibly one no one wanted her to know. She didn't sleep that night. The image of the photo burned into her memory, the name Rachel Everett echoing in her thoughts. She tried to recall the adoption process, step by step. Thomas had handled most of the paperwork, she remembered. He said he knew someone at the agency. It had all seemed so straightforward at the time. She'd been so overwhelmed with joy when they brought Caleb home that she hadn't questioned anything. Now, the questions wouldn't stop. The next morning, before anyone else was awake, she pulled the wallet out again and stared at it under the kitchen light. There had to be more. Some clue. Some thread she could pull. But all that remained were the cards and the photograph. She realized she couldn't let this go. She had to find out who Rachel Everett was, what had happened to her, and how, if at all, her family was connected to this woman's disappearance. The discovery of the wallet had felt like a random event. But the more Anna thought about it, the less random it seemed. Why was it left in that parking lot? Why near her car? Had someone placed it there deliberately? Or had it truly been an accident? Either way, it had found its way into her hands. And with it came a secret that could tear apart everything she believed about her family. Anna sat alone in the kitchen as the sun rose behind the trees. The photo lay on the table in front of her, a quiet, haunting window into a life she never knew existed. She didn't know what she was about to uncover. But deep in her gut, she knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The morning after Anna found the wallet, the world outside seemed deceptively calm. The trees swayed gently in the breeze. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, and birds chirped in the distance. But inside Anna's mind, a storm was brewing. The photo from the wallet sat on the counter beside her coffee mug. Her eyes drifted back to it every few seconds, as if it might somehow change or reveal more than it had the night before. She had barely slept, her thoughts tangled with images of Rachel Everett and the baby that looked too much like Caleb to ignore. She knew she couldn't just sit with this secret. She had to know more. The name on the credit cards was a starting point. Rachel Everett. Anna returned to her laptop and pulled up the old social media profile she had discovered the night before. The page was still active, though it hadn't been updated in nearly a decade. The profile picture was the same woman, Rachel, smiling. In the sun, her long dark hair framing her face. Anna clicked through every photo, scanning each one for clues. Some pictures showed Rachel with friends, others with family. And then there was one taken in front of a brick building with a sign partially visible. Anna zoomed in and saw the words, Riverside Women's Clinic. That name triggered something in her memory. She had seen it before, on the top corner, of a medical form Thomas had once brought home by mistake. She remembered it because she had asked him about it. He said it was one of the clinics he occasionally worked with when consulting on complex cases. At the time, it hadn't seemed odd. But now, it felt significant. Anna began to search the clinic online, trying to piece together a timeline. According to public records, the Riverside Women's Clinic was operational until about 10 years ago. It had closed abruptly after several investigations into misfiled patient documents and complaints of unprofessional conduct. The clinic's medical director at the time was listed as Dr. Charles Lorman, but a list of consulting physicians included Thomas Mitchell, her husband. The coincidence was too glaring to ignore. Rachel had gone missing after visiting that clinic. Her husband had worked there during the same period, yet he had never mentioned it, never brought up any unusual cases, never hinted at knowing someone named Rachel Everett. The web of questions only grew tighter. Anna's next step was to dig into the missing persons report again. She read it more carefully this time. Rachel had disappeared just weeks before her due date. According to her sister, she was planning to meet someone about finalizing an adoption plan. She had seemed nervous, even frightened, but hadn't revealed who she was meeting. After that, she vanished. That word, adoption, hit Anna like a punch in the chest. Caleb had been adopted as a newborn around the same time. It felt like too much to be coincidence. The puzzle pieces were beginning to slide into place, but the picture they formed was something Anna wasn't ready to see. She tried contacting the adoption agency, using the number listed on Caleb's paperwork. A polite woman answered and confirmed that their records were confidential and sealed. Anna asked if there was any way to get information about Caleb's biological mother. The woman explained that without a court order, the records couldn't be shared. Even with one, many of the details might remain redacted. Frustrated but not discouraged, Anna turned back to the internet. She searched for Rachel's friends, family, anyone who might still be looking for her. She found a post on a community forum from nearly a decade ago. It was written by someone named Claire Everett, Rachel's sister. The post was desperate and emotional, pleading for help in locating Rachel. It included an email address. Anna hesitated. Reaching out meant stepping fully into something she couldn't undo. But the image of Caleb's birthmark and the photo of the baby in Rachel's arms wouldn't let her go. She composed a message, short and careful, asking if Claire was still looking for her sister. She didn't give too much away, just mentioned that she had come across something that might be related to Rachel's disappearance. She hit send and closed the laptop, her hands shaking. The rest of the day passed slowly. Anna tried to carry on as normal, making lunch for Caleb, folding laundry, pretending to read while he watched cartoons. But her mind remained stuck on that message. She checked her email every few minutes, waiting. Late that evening, the reply came. Claire responded with cautious hope. She had never stopped looking for her sister. Over the years, most people had moved on, assuming the worst, but Claire never gave up. She asked what Anna had found. Anna took a deep breath and replied with more detail, describing the wallet, the photo, and how the baby looked like her son. She attached a picture of the photograph and waited. Claire's response was swift. Her message was frantic. She confirmed it was Rachel in the picture and said the baby had to be her nephew. She had never seen the photo before, but the location in the background matched a park near Rachel's old apartment. Claire asked the question Anna had feared. Who was the baby? And how had Anna found the wallet? Anna hesitated before answering. She didn't want to open the door too far, not yet. She simply said the photo had raised serious questions, and she was trying to get answers herself. She promised to stay in touch. The exchange with Claire left Anna feeling both validated and unnerved. She was no longer imagining the resemblance. It was real. Claire believed the baby was Rachel's, and Rachel had disappeared right before Caleb was born. The implications were staggering. Could it be that Caleb hadn't been given up for adoption, but taken? Anna sat on the edge of her bed long after Thomas had fallen asleep. He hadn't noticed her distraction. He rarely did anymore. He had chalked it up to stress or errands or her book club, whatever explanation she casually offered. But behind his oblivious smile, Anna saw something else now. A secret. Maybe more than one. She returned to the study, careful not to wake anyone. She searched through the desk drawers, looking for anything that might link Thomas to Rachel more directly. After an hour of digging, she found a file labeled Consultations 2015. Inside were documents from several clinics, including Riverside Women's Clinic. One of the pages listed Rachel Everett's name, along with a series of notations. Most were innocuous, but the last line read, "Closed. Patient ceased communication after last visit. No follow-up." Anna stared at the words, her heart pounding. The date of that last visit? 1 week before Rachel was reported missing. It was all becoming impossible to ignore. Her husband, the clinic, the photo, the disappearance. Everything pointed to a truth darker than anything she could have imagined. A truth she was only beginning to uncover. The days following Anna's discovery passed in a haze of tension and quiet dread. Her usual routines, packing lunches, folding laundry, pretending to laugh at Caleb's jokes, felt like she was sleepwalking through someone else's life. Every moment she spent alone was consumed by questions she couldn't shake. What had her husband done? And how far had he gone to hide it? The file she had found in his study continued to haunt her. The brief note about Rachel Everett had been clinical, devoid of emotion, yet laced with implication. Patient ceased communication. But Rachel hadn't just stopped calling. She had vanished. That last visit at the clinic aligned too perfectly with the timeline of her disappearance and Caleb's sudden appearance in their lives. Anna knew she couldn't rely on her suspicions alone. She needed proof, something undeniable. She returned to the file in the study, combing through every name and date listed. Most entries were routine, checkups, test results, follow-ups. But one stood out. Another woman's name had a similar note beside it. No further contact. Case closed. The pattern chilled her. She jotted down every unusual entry and began building a quiet timeline on her laptop, noting when these patients had stopped communication and comparing those dates to other records she could find. Several of the women had one thing in common. They had all been pregnant and had reportedly been considering adoption, and all had passed through the same clinic where Thomas had consulted. Anna dug deeper. She spent her nights combing public databases, looking for any information on the names she had found. One or two had sparse digital footprints, old social media profiles, or archived blog posts about motherhood. But Rachel's case remained the most prominent. News articles mentioned her briefly, then faded as the years passed. The original investigation had gone nowhere. There had been no suspects, no body, just a woman who vanished without a trace. She realized that if she wanted answers, she had to go beyond what the internet could offer. She reached out to the local police department anonymously, requesting a copy of Rachel Everett's missing persons file. The woman on the phone informed her that it was a closed case with no updates. The word struck Anna like a slap. Closed. As if Rachel had simply stopped mattering. That night, unable to sleep, she returned to the old photo. She scanned it and enlarged it on her computer screen. The background revealed more than she had first noticed. A playground fence, a faded mural on the park wall, and a blurry license plate on a car in the distance. Anna wondered if the photo had been taken the same day Rachel had vanished. Was someone watching them? Had the person behind the camera known it was the last picture of Rachel and her baby together? As if guided by instinct, Anna turned her attention to their home security system. The cloud-based camera footage only stored a few days' worth of video, but something about the wallet's location in the parking lot had bothered her. She had found it right by her car, too perfectly placed. What if it hadn't been lost by accident? What if someone had left it for her to find? She pulled up the footage from that day. The angle from the driveway cam wasn't great, but it caught part of the street. She watched herself leave, then return a few hours later. Just as she parked, a dark SUV slowed near the curb and paused for several seconds. She leaned in closer. The driver's face was obscured, but the vehicle stayed too long to be random. The timing was almost exact, minutes before she found the wallet. Her pulse quickened. Had someone wanted her to find it? Why? To tell her the truth or to threaten her? The next day, she contacted the adoption agency again, this time under a different pretense. She claimed to be doing a personal ancestry project and asked if any biological information could be shared with her son in mind. The woman on the line politely repeated the agency's confidentiality policy. But this time, Anna caught hesitation in her voice when she asked about the specific year Caleb had been adopted. The silence that followed was brief, but telling. Something wasn't right. Anna hung up and sat in silence, the weight of it all crushing her. She looked over at Caleb, playing on the rug with his toys. He was happy, innocent, unaware of the storm closing in. She couldn't protect him from a truth she didn't fully understand. But she had to try. That evening, she waited until Thomas had gone to bed. She slipped into his study once again, this time determined to find something deeper. Behind the bookshelves. In a drawer she hadn't checked before, she found a locked metal box. It was small, but heavy. She rummaged through his desk and finally found a key taped beneath a drawer. Her hands trembled as she turned the lock and lifted the lid. Inside was a collection of documents, photographs, and USB drives. Some were labeled with dates and patient names. One folder caught her attention immediately. It was marked Everett, R. She opened it and saw a series of intake forms, medical charts, and signed consent papers. Her breath caught when she saw a birth certificate, but the space for the mother's name had been blacked out. The father's section was left blank. The baby's name was listed simply as infant male. A photo paperclipped to the back showed a newborn, eyes closed, swaddled, with a hospital tag around his ankle. The birthmark was visible. It was Caleb. There was no doubt. Anna stared at the file, her world spinning. This wasn't an adoption. This was something else entirely. The paperwork had been manipulated. Her husband had used his influence, his knowledge of the system, to orchestrate a transfer of a child from a mother who had never consented, and Rachel had disappeared shortly after. The implication was terrifying. She thumbed through the other documents and found what looked like scanned ID cards from multiple women. Some were familiar from the list she had made. There was even a handwritten note on one that read, "No next of kin listed. Good candidate." Anna dropped the papers, a wave of nausea washing over her. Her husband wasn't just complicit in something unethical. He had been running a private operation in the shadows of his legitimate practice, targeting vulnerable women, manipulating them, and possibly worse. The question wasn't whether he knew Rachel Everett, it was what he had done to her. Anna gathered the contents of the box and placed them in her tote bag. She would go to the police. There was no turning back now. In one terrifying moment, the life she had built shattered completely. Her marriage, her trust, the very foundation of how her family began. She didn't know yet where this road would lead, but she knew she had just uncovered something monstrous, and she had to make it right. Anna didn't sleep the night she found the documents. She sat in the kitchen long after the house had gone quiet, staring at the contents of the metal box. The pages were still spread across the table, each one more disturbing than the last. Her hands were cold, her chest tight. Every minute that passed made her more certain, whatever Thomas had done, it wasn't just unethical. It was criminal. A day. Morning light crept through the window. She began sorting through the evidence, organizing it into folders. She labeled them carefully. Rachel Everett, patient records, adoption documents, and one simply marked unknown. The latter held forms and photos of women she didn't recognize, others who might have been victims of the same scheme. Anna's mind reeled at the possibility that there were more women like Rachel, more children like Caleb. She had to get this information to the authorities, but she also knew she couldn't walk into a police station unprepared. If she accused a respected doctor, her husband, without enough proof, there was a risk it could all be dismissed. Or worse, he could find out and destroy everything before an investigation could begin. Anna backed up every document onto a separate, encrypted flash drive. She took photos of each page and uploaded them to a secure online folder she created under a fake name. She stored one flash drive at home and slipped another into her glove compartment. She couldn't afford to take chances. Her heart pounded with every step she took, imagining Thomas walking in at any moment. He acted normal that morning, smiling at Caleb, sipping coffee, talking about a conference he had next week. Anna watched him, trying to hide the disgust building inside her. Every word he spoke sounded rehearsed now. She wondered how long he had been lying. How much of their life together had been built on secrets. Later that day, Anna arranged to meet Claire Everett in person. Claire had driven into town after receiving Anna's last email. They met at a quiet cafe on the edge of the city. Claire looked older than her online photos, tired, worn down by years of searching for her sister, but her eyes still burned with determination. Anna brought only copies of the documents related to Rachel. She didn't want to overwhelm Claire, but she needed her to see the truth. Claire read each page slowly, her hands trembling. When she saw the photo of baby Caleb, the one taken in the hospital, with the birthmark clearly visible, she gasped. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't speak for several minutes. Anna reached across the table, her own voice barely a whisper. She explained everything she had uncovered. Thomas's connection to the clinic, the falsified documents, the similarities between Rachel's case and others. Claire listened silently, nodding, gripping the papers as if they were the last piece of her sister she had left. When she finally spoke, Her voice was hoarse. She said she had always believed Rachel hadn't left by choice, that something had happened to her. She had suspected foul play, but the police had found no leads. Claire had tried for years to keep the case alive, but it had eventually gone cold. Now, looking at the evidence Anna had uncovered, she said it was like a dam breaking. Everything made sense. The fear Rachel had expressed before she disappeared, the mysterious adoption, the lack of follow-up by authorities. Claire asked only one thing: to see Caleb, just once. Anna hesitated. She didn't want to confuse her son or expose him to something so dark. But she also felt a responsibility to Rachel. Caleb might be the only piece of her left in the world. They agreed to meet again the following week, once Anna had made more progress with the authorities. Claire would wait for that confirmation before anything more personal took place. That night, Anna contacted a friend from college, now a journalist, working on investigative pieces for a regional news outlet. She didn't give her name at first. She spoke cautiously, describing the case as a tip, something worth digging into. The journalist was intrigued and asked for documents. Anna sent her redacted versions and promised more if she took it seriously. "Within hours," the journalist replied, saying the documents were disturbing and potentially explosive. She wanted to meet in person, but Anna had another priority first. The next morning, she visited a lawyer specializing in family and criminal law. She told him everything, under oath and in confidence. She handed him the full file. He listened, without interrupting, taking notes, occasionally shaking his head. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and told her she was doing the right thing. He said the evidence was substantial and should be presented directly to law enforcement. He offered to represent her pro bono if she agreed to go forward, as a witness. She agreed without hesitation. That same day, with her lawyer at her side, Anna entered the police station and filed a report. It was the beginning of a process that would upend everything. Within 48 hours, detectives began quietly reviewing the documents. They reached out to the adoption agency, to former staff at the defunct clinic, and to the Department of Health. They uncovered inconsistencies in paperwork, false signatures, and missing consent forms. It was enough to open a formal investigation. But Anna knew time was short. She began to notice subtle changes in Thomas's behavior. He became more attentive, almost too attentive. He asked more questions about her schedule, her phone calls, her errands. Once she caught him checking her computer history. She knew he was suspicious. One evening, while he was in the shower, Anna checked his briefcase. Tucked beneath his files was a burner phone. Its message history was erased, but a few recent calls had been logged to numbers she didn't recognize. She wrote them down and searched them later. One belonged to a man previously listed as an orderly at the Riverside Women's Clinic, someone fired just before it shut down. Thomas was cleaning up. The weight of what she was doing became heavier each day. She was betraying her husband, but only because she now believed he had betrayed something far greater. The vows they took meant nothing in the face of what he'd done. On the 4th day after her police report, she received a call. Authorities had issued a warrant for Thomas's arrest. They planned to act discreetly without tipping him off. Anna agreed to take Caleb out for the day to avoid any trauma. When she returned home that evening, Thomas was gone. The police had missed him by less than an hour. He had packed a bag, taken cash from their emergency drawer, and disappeared. There was no note, no message, just an empty closet and the lingering dread that he had known all along. The man she thought she knew had vanished. and the truth was still unfolding. Anna clutched Caleb tightly that night, unsure of what would come next. She had exposed the darkness, but the shadow it left behind was just beginning to spread. The days following Thomas's disappearance moved slowly, thick with fear and uncertainty. Anna kept the blinds closed and the doors locked, always checking twice before leaving the house. Every knock, every unfamiliar car passing by sent a jolt of anxiety through her. Caleb, still too young to understand what was happening, sensed the change. He clung to her more often, asked more questions, and grew quiet when she had no answers to give. The police launched a manhunt, but without a clear trail, progress was slow. Thomas had left no digital footprint, no credit card use, no cell activity, no messages. He'd planned his escape well. The detective assigned to the case called Anna daily, offering updates that felt more like reassurances than real news. They believed he was still in the country. They believed he would make a mistake. But belief didn't offer protection. Anna was moved to a temporary safe location provided by law enforcement. They feared Thomas might return, either to silence her or to take Caleb. She lived in a small apartment under a false name, unable to work, unable to contact most friends or family. Isolation began to chip away at her resolve. But even in hiding, she continued pushing the case forward. The journalist she'd contacted published the story, exposing Thomas's involvement in a possible illegal adoption ring. It made headlines. Doctor vanishes amid shocking adoption scandal. The article included redacted documents, statements from Claire Everett, and interviews with other families who had used the same agency. Some had no idea the adoptions they'd completed might have involved coercion or fraud. Others had long suspected something wasn't right but had been too afraid to speak. The story reopened investigations into several missing persons cases. Rachel Everett's name returned to the news, this time accompanied by new hope. Claire became a face for the growing movement, speaking at press conferences and pushing for justice. She met Caleb briefly and gently at Anna's request. The moment was emotional, but careful. Claire didn't try to claim anything. She simply told Caleb she was someone who loved his birth mother and would always care about him. Anna watched the interaction with a heavy heart. She didn't know what the future held for her family, or even what family truly meant now. But she knew Caleb had a right to the truth, however painful it might be. As the weeks passed, more women came forward with stories of mistreatment at clinics connected to Thomas. Some had signed adoption papers under pressure. Others had been told their babies were stillborn or unfit for survival, only to later learn the children had been adopted out without their knowledge. Anna felt sick reading their statements, each one echoing a pattern of manipulation and deceit. The case widened from a single doctor's wrongdoing to a systemic failure, implicating staff members, social workers, and administrators who had turned a blind eye. Despite the growing evidence, Thomas remained missing. Interpol issued an alert. His photos circulated online and on news programs. Tips came in from all over the country, sightings at gas stations, airports, small towns, but none led to him. Then, nearly 2 months after he vanished, Anna received a package. There was no return address. It arrived at the police drop box, linked to her case. Inside was a USB drive and a single photograph, her wedding photo, torn in half. She handed it over immediately. The USB contained a recorded message, video footage, grainy and dim, showing Thomas sitting at a desk in an unfamiliar room. His face was thinner, his beard grown in. He looked directly into the camera, his expression calm. In the recording, he said he had no regrets. that what he had done to save children from broken lives. He described the mothers as unfit and the system as corrupt. He claimed the adoptions were acts of mercy. He offered no apology, no acknowledgement of Rachel Everett or the others who had disappeared. Then he said Anna had ruined everything and warned her that some things can't be undone. The message ended with him leaning forward and turning off the camera. Investigators scoured the footage for clues, background noise, light patterns, wall textures, but found nothing definitive. Still, the video proved he was alive. And it confirmed what Anna already feared. He didn't think he had done anything wrong. The authorities increased their efforts. Surveillance was added around Anna's new residence. She was given a panic button and a direct line to her case officer. Every time she stepped outside, her eyes scanned crowds, shadows, strangers. She knew Thomas was watching, maybe not physically, but certainly mentally. He had always been 2 steps ahead. But now, she was catching up. Months passed. Arrests were made. 2 former clinic staff members were charged with conspiracy and fraud. The adoption agency faced multiple lawsuits. A task force was created to examine gaps in adoption oversight nationwide. Anna testified twice, her words steady, her voice clear. She didn't cry. She had done enough crying already. In court, a judge ruled that all adoption files linked to the agency would be reviewed by a third party. New legislation was introduced in the state to protect biological mothers from coercion and require stricter oversight of private adoption practices. What started with a lost wallet had led to a national reckoning, but justice still felt incomplete. Thomas was still out there. Then, almost a year to the day after Rachel Everett's disappearance had first resurfaced, a body was found in a wooded area 3 states away, decomposed, hidden beneath loose boards in an abandoned shack. A DNA test confirmed it was Rachel. Her family finally had an answer, though the truth brought little comfort. She had never run. She had never abandoned her child. She had been taken and silenced. Anna attended Rachel's memorial, standing in the back as Claire read a letter to her sister. She held Caleb's hand tightly. He didn't understand the full story yet, but someday he would. And when that day came, she wanted to be able to tell him that the truth had been fought for, that the lie they lived under had been destroyed. Months later, Anna moved again, this time to a small coastal town where no one knew her name. She changed Caleb's last name and enrolled him in a new school. He was older now, stronger, but still gentle and curious. She began working remotely as an editor, slowly rebuilding a life on honest ground. She never remarried. She never heard from Thomas again. Sometimes she wondered where he had gone, what name he used now, whether he ever looked at the photo he had torn in half. But most days, she focused on the present, on Caleb's laughter, the sound of waves, the peace that came from not having to lie anymore. The past still lived with her. It always would, but it no longer owned her. The truth had cost her everything, but it had also set her free.